this encounter between then President Trump and then Vice President Mike Pence. And it says this was actually something that happened after Pence's political committee had hired Corey Lewandowski, who was the president's advisor. And he writes this: he, meaning Trump, crumpled the article and threw it at his vice president. So disloyal, Mr. Trump said. Mr. Pence lost it. Mr. Pence picked up the article and threw it back at Mr. Trump. He leaned forward, toward the president, and pointed a finger a few inches from his chest. We walked you through every detail of this, Mr. Pence snarled. We did this for you as a favor, and this is how you respond. You need to get your facts straight. I just wonder what you think about this, because obviously this challenges the very public face that Pence put on, where he was so complimentary and so differential to Trump.
Well, I think the moral of the story is some people, you can only take so much, even Mike Pence. I can only say, though, that I wish that we had seen a little more of that Mike Pence publicly and not heard it, after everything was over, when people are trying to rehabilitate their reputations. I mean, the fact of the matter is there should have been more pushback on the president and more pushback publicly on the president when President Trump, when he did outrageous things. And I just wish we had seen more of that from Mike Pence.
The book also suggests that after the election, the former president wanted to replace Bill Barr as Attorney General with John Ratcliffe. What do you think of that?
What I find most interesting about that is Ratcliffe had the smarts not to take the job. And, again, it just shows you that you can never please the man. I mean, Bill Barr did so much to humor Donald Trump, and yet it wasn't enough. I mean, it wasn't enough because, as it's described in, I think, Jonathan Karl's excerpt, which covers some of the same material, it wasn't enough for Trump because Barr didn't, at the end of the day, engage in litigation on behalf of the fake election fraud claims. He didn't indict Hunter Biden. He didn't issue the Durham report. He didn't indict Jim Comey. Nothing was ever enough for Donald Trump. And the reason why it got so out of hand was, people didn't push back at the interim steps. They acceded to some of his desires and wishes in certain ways, and Barr was one of the biggest people humoring Trump, and it just gets worse and worse and worse, and that's what happened. And that's why I said just a moment ago, I wish that Mike Pence had pushed back a little more. But then again, he wouldn't be renominated in 2020, and that's the risk he was pushing. And with Barr, he runs the risk of being fired. And that was sort of the moral of the story, in a lot of ways, about the Trump administration, is that people were more concerned about their jobs than about principle and about pushing back on the president and about doing the right thing. And that's one of the reasons why we are where we are today.
So I wonder what you think about Mike Pompeo's portrayal here, because he certainly would fit into that category here. This book reveals that he warned colleagues, quote, the crazies have taken over as Trump's fraud conspiracy theories were growing after the election.
That's really nice that he thought that and that he said that privately. Why didn't he go onto Fox and say that? Why? And we're all hearing it now. Oh, the crazies were there. There was nobody there to push back. It's terrible. Look at it's Rudy Giuliani's fault. Well, you could have said something at the time, all these folks. Well, and they didn't. And that's the most outrageous thing about it.
And it's
they knew better. We're just going to say privately, you lost the election. Shh. And when they didn't do it publicly, they needed to do it publicly. At least, you can give Barr some credit and McConnell, who put Barr up to it, give him some credit for saying we didn't see enough fraud. But that was basically the extent of it. Everybody else just kept their mouth shut. Oh, it'll just run its course. Sooner or later, he'll accept the results. No, he won't. That's not who he is.
Do you think we'll ever get answers, George? Here, I imagine it will take years, but do you think that we will ever get answers from people who are in these positions to do this, and will reflect on this years from now in a historical way and answer that question? Why didn't you stand up?
I'd like to hear that. I really would. Yeah. I'd like to hear that, because a lot of people knew better.
But look, it's lingering. It's the same thing. It's connected to where we are today.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's the same connection to Republicans in office who are afraid of losing their jobs.
Right. And it goes to the same reason why you see just minor pushback against Marjorie Taylor Greene, as was reported in the last hour. They say, "Oh, could you do this little show on TV just to make up for it?" And they don't punish her for saying outrageous things. And yet, on the other hand, you've got Liz Cheney, who loses her leadership position because she simply told the truth. It's the same thing. People are not willing to basically tell, not just Trump, but the Republican base generally, that, here's the truth, and we have to accept that truth, and we have to accept the truth that Donald Trump lost. We have to accept, and here are the reasons why. It's not, it's not brown shirt tactics to make people or to urge people to take the vaccine that, Donald Trump brags about having created. Right? Doesn't even make any sense. And yet there's not that pushback. There's not that leadership because people are more concerned about their individual political careers, about McCarthy becoming speaker, than they are about doing the right thing for their own constituents and for their own party. And it's self-destructive. It's the reason why they lost the presidency and the House and the Senate. And it's not going to get them anywhere good in the future.
It's not going to change anytime soon, though. That is so clear.
That's true.
George, if you could stick around for us for just a moment. Coming up, what could be the real reason for former President Trump suing Facebook